Park Church, and we do value health and well-being. If you don't know much about the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Seventh-day Adventist Church has been a pioneer in health for many, many, many years, okay? Going back to the 1800s. Who's heard of Wheat Bix? All right, you know Wheat Bix is owned by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, right? And many of the other health products that you'll find in Woolworths and Coles, some of the vegetarian products, that's owned by Sanitarium as well. Sanitarium is the health arm of the church. Of course, we also have centers as well that work for healing, natural health retreats. We have some of those centers. Dr. Ramirez has worked with some of those premier ones in the United States of America, and he can tell you a little bit more about that. So that's where the emphasis on health comes from. It also comes from the Bible as Christians. If Christians actually read the Bible, you know there's quite a lot that's said on health because God cares for our health and well-being, our spiritual health, but also our mental health and our physical health. So that's where the emphasis comes from. So that's a little bit about the church and the health arm of the church, and that's a little bit about me as well. So I'm just going to invite Dr. Ramirez up now. Would you come forward, Doctor?
Yes.
Thank you. And I believe you do have a mic on yourself there.
Yes, I have a microphone on.
So I picked up Dr. Ramirez, was it night before,
That's
right, from the airport, and he's had a bit of a day of rest, and now we're glad to have you here this evening. I thought we may just ask a few questions so we could find out a little bit more about you. You are a family man.
Yes.
Could you tell us about your family?
I have my wife, Susan, and 3 daughters, 20, 17, and 15.
Okay, 3 girls.
That's right, 3 girls.
And you live in Pennsylvania?
I live in Pennsylvania.
That's right.
I actually took this photo just a few weeks ago. That's how it was there. While you guys were enjoying summer, we were in the winter.
Okay. So you do a bit of snow skiing.
Yes.
And you've been working on the health side of things for many, many years. Would you give us a little bit of background?
Yeah, for 30 years I've worked in different lifestyle centers. Now they count this, 30 years that I work in these places. So I have seen how when you identify the causes of disease, you can actually reverse many of these conditions. We'll be talking a little bit about that tonight.
Excellent. And you've published, you've been co-publisher in some books, and you've published one of your own books as well.
Yep.
And what books were they, and what did they particularly focus on?
Yeah, my latest book is called Pandemic Busters, and it talks about 22 things you need to be doing to improve your immunity. And also I published quite a bit in the scientific literature. The count is 165 research projects in the scientific literature.
Okay, fantastic. And you've co-authored as well?
Yeah, I also co-author multiple books. The textbook of lifestyle medicine, I'm a co-author of that book, as well as a book by the name of Rethink Food, together with Michael Greger, Neil Barnard, Dean Ornish, Joel Furman, and other lifestyle medicine physicians.
Yes. Okay, fantastic. So we're going to trust to your expertise over the course of this series. I would like to mention that we did advertise the first 3 days of presentation, okay? But we didn't put all the presentations on there because Dr. Ramirez is actually with us here for a full week presenting every day. So you have on your flyers that you would have seen, you would have had tonight, tomorrow 3 presentations, and then Sunday there's a couple of presentations as well in the afternoon. But then there's also Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 7 p.m. every night. And then we finish next Saturday morning with Dr. Ramirez. So just to let you know. So if you enjoy tonight, I'm sure you want to come back. If you enjoy tomorrow and Sunday, I'm sure you want to come for the rest of the week too.
And take advantage of the fact that I am here. I mean,
yes.
just a week ago, last Sunday, I was in Congo, Africa. On Monday, I was in Ethiopia. On Tuesday, I was in Kenya. On Wednesday, I was in Turkey. On Thursday, I was in Canada. On Friday, I was in Romania, Europe. Now I'm here. So take advantage of the fact that I am here.
Amen. Thank you. So I encourage you to come while he's here. And look, feel free to take notes if you like and so forth. And I know Dr. Ramirez is always happy to answer some questions that you may have as well for him. All
That's
right.
right.
Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. Well, I was at home the other day, and then this creature came to visit us. Let's see if you can identify which animal is this. Give me 1 second here, right here. Anybody knows what that is? You don't have any here? I should bring you some. I actually like this creature. I like this creature maybe because I'm originally from Mexico. And if you see in a flag of Mexico, what do you see in the flag of Mexico? What's there in the middle? Why is there a rattlesnake in the flag of Mexico? Well, the story goes that supposedly the indigenous people of Mexico, they wanted to build a city, and the sign where to build the city was supposedly where they found an eagle eating a snake. And supposedly that's what they found in what today is Mexico City. And that's why they built Mexico City right there, because that's where they found that sign. I do a lot of research. This is one of my latest research papers. In this one, we were documenting how hydrotherapy is one of the best things you can do to improve your immunity. And in this particular paper, we are focusing on the prevention and treatment of COVID-19. I wish I would have been promoting this much more during the pandemic. And if you talk about hydrotherapy, one of the leaders worldwide on hydrotherapy happened to be the people of Finland. Anybody knows what the people of Finland do that is something very cultural? Anyone? The sauna bath. Every house in Finland has a sauna. Statistics, there is one sauna bath for every 2 people. So not only every house has it, there's also the public saunas that they also use. That's where they like to, go and connect with other people and so forth. If you're not familiar with the sauna bath, is this basically a room out of wood, and then you have some sort of source of heat. It could be electricity, fire, and so forth. And then they heat the stones. You put some water in those stones, and then that puts this steam all over the room, increasing the body temperature. And this is not a new concept. This is the indigenous people of Mexico. This painting is actually more than 700 years old. And you can see them there putting the wood there on the left side. And they are heating the room next door. And that's how they do the same effect as the sauna bath that the Finnish people do. In fact, we know why it works today. There's science behind this. Learn this. There's something called the interference. So interference interfere with virus and bacteria. When your interference are nice and elevated, the probability that you're going to get sick of a viral infection is actually quite low. In fact, we could actually predict who was going to have the famous severe type of COVID-19 were the people that had very low levels of interference in their body. There's multiple ways you can increase them. One of them is through hydrotherapy. Notice what happens when you reach the temperature of 39 degrees. Your interference literally explode in your body, which is very, very good. And we know this from COVID-19 times in Finland. See, in Finland, 75% of the people that died of COVID-19 were foreigners living in Finland. See, the foreigners don't do the sauna bath as religiously as those Finnish people do it. Those Finnish people are going to do the sauna bath once, twice, 3 times per week every single one of them. It's something very, very cultural of Finland. So I was in Finland last year in the winter, and I told my friends, I want to do the sauna bath the way the Finnish people do it. And they told me, are you sure? I'm very sure. Okay, so we went, took out the chainsaws, and went down to the frozen lake, started making, holes there in the frozen lake. It was quite the workout. You have to, remove those big blocks of ice. And then we went and warmed up the sauna bath, and bam, went there inside the frozen lake, and then you count 1, 2, and 3, and boom, you go down there. Finnish people have been doing this for thousands of years. And they must be into something, because if you check, the longevity of the Finnish people is among the longest in the world. So they get multiple benefits through this sauna bath. I actually wrote a book about it. It's called Pandemic Busters. The book is translated into 8 languages. So if you're interested in checking out, there's a whole chapter there on hydrotherapy. Notice the interesting quote that I found: a home without a sauna is not a home, they say the Finnish people. And the book is written like this. It's like an infographic the whole way. You can get a few chapters for free, 4 chapters for free, including the chapter of hydrotherapy, if you go to this site. Just type in your browser HealthWise, Wise is in WHYS, healthwise.store. So once you go to that page, what you're going to do, you will see this menu. Click where it says there, free downloads. And after you click there, you can choose the language of your choice, and you can download those 4 free chapters. And feel free to tell others about it. And let me give you this information from the beginning. I'm going to be citing some of my research. All my research is found on that first link of ResearchGate. Go to your Google and put Francisco, which is my other name, Francisco Ramirez ResearchGate. That'll take you the first hit. That's going to be my ResearchGate link. There's also a very active Twitter account, Eddie RDMD. Every day I put things there to motivate you to do good, positive lifestyle changes. There's also a YouTube page there with videos with multiple languages. I'm all the time trying to upload different videos. And if you want to come and travel with me around the world, there is that Instagram page if you want to see what I am seeing around the world. Let me give you a few samples of the things that I put on my Twitter account. Look at this one. If you don't have a regular exercise program, that is worse for you than having heart disease, being a smoker, and having diabetes. That's how bad it is for you not to have a regular exercise program. In fact, this other fascinating study tells you that you can actually predict how long somebody is going to live by how much exercise you can do. If I put you on a treadmill, how much exercise you can do predicts your longevity. And that's why you need to work on your fitness, being physically fit, because it's directly related to your longevity. This other also fascinating study, this is journal Nature, one of the top journals in the world. It was documenting that we are seeing a tremendous increase in cancers among young people 50 years and younger. See, in the old days, we used to see cancers in 70s, 80s, and so forth, but so many in young people. And the researchers pinpoint to the following causes. Use of alcohol. Alcohol is a carcinogen, so increases your risk of cancer tremendously. Not sleeping enough, Smoking, obesity, and those highly refined foods, those things increase very much your risk of cancer. Notice that bad luck was not in the list. Rather, there are things that we can practically do and change as we try to decrease that risk of cancer. This other fascinating study, in this study, they were documenting that males that drink alcohol 3 months before they make their partner pregnant, the babies that are a result of that conception have a 44% increase of a heart defect. And if they abuse the alcohol, they did binge drinking 6 months before they made their partner pregnant, that risk of heart defect increases by 52%. So as you can see, fertility and alcohol, not a very good combination. In fact, that's the drink that sometimes they serve at weddings, isn't it? That's the wrong drink to serve at that time. You want to stay away as far as possible because you end up affecting, the conception process and so forth. This other very interesting study, they found 100-year-olds and they asked them, share with us something brief that has helped you, in your opinion, to reach to 100 years. And here are some of those ideas that they circulated, these 100-year-old people. Do what you love, keep asking questions, be kind, stay true to your principles, learn tolerance, share your friendships, keep moving, think positive, never stop reading, learn from your elders, stay determined, believe in your own potential, don't neglect your education, choose the right life partner. So these are things that they are saying, that help them live to that 100 years. So yeah, those 100-year-olds definitely can teach us, isn't it, a few things about life as they've been gone in front of us. This other one showing the risk of sitting down for too long. So if your work involves sitting down too much, you have to be getting up on a regular basis because sitting down for too long increases your risk of stroke. Okay, as blood pools down in your legs, a possibility of a stroke increases. So this is a study that came out of Harvard. This other one interesting study also, this 100-year-old, 112-year-old, they asked him, he's the longest living male on earth. And they asked him, what's the secret of your longevity? He says it's two things. One, always smile. When you smile, you actually release positive chemicals in your brain. Number two, don't get angry. When you get angry, you generate what are called the oxygen-free radicals, which literally age you. Is not worth it. You need to learn to forgive, and just give it up. Somebody cuts in front of you, well, they cut in front of you, and that's it. If you get angry, what do you solve? In fact, you may even do something foolish, and end up in even bigger trouble and so forth. So things like that is what I put there on my Twitter account with the objective of helping you to motivate you to do those positive lifestyle changes. So tonight we're going to talk about epigenetics, how those genes, we can actually do something about them. One common excuse that I hear with patients, they tell me, doctor, the problem that I have is that I have very bad genes. My father, had this disease. My grandfather died of this one, and my grandmother is currently with this other disease, and so forth. I think I'm destined to be a very sick person because my inheritance may not necessarily be the best. But you know what? that is not necessarily true for most cases. Because what we are learning is that you can do something about it. For example, one of our patients, this is one of our patients that came to our New Start program up in Weimar. I published this clinical case in a journal from the American Heart Association. Classic patient that comes to us, this patient has a problem with diabetes, taking one medication. The patient has a problem with blood pressure, 158/78, even though he's taking 2 medications for that blood pressure. And this patient has a significant problem with his weight. 173 kilos is his weight. Now, after 18 days of changing the way he was living, changing the way he was resting, changing the way he was exercising, changing the way he was eating, and all these factors that can be changed, in a matter of 18 days, he was able to lose 7.3 kilos. And the improvement was dramatical. As we went ahead and continued checking his glucose and so forth, we determined we had to stop the medication for diabetes because he no longer needed that medication. As we went ahead and checked his blood pressure, look at the numbers, beautiful numbers, 116/72. We had to stop his blood pressure medication because if you continue somebody with those numbers with blood pressure medication, they can crash down so low, you're going to pass out. So after the tremendous improvement that he did in that 18-day intervention, at the end of the 18 days, he didn't say, oh, I got well, I'm going to go back to my old ways. No, he learned his lesson very well. And he continued at home with that new way of living. So 11 months later, we check him out, and everything looks beautiful. Look at his blood pressure, beautiful, 110/68 with no medication whatsoever. His cholesterol's also improved. That's in parentheses are your numbers here. The American ones are the big ones, and in parentheses the Australian and European. So cholesterol 3.6, beautiful. That's exactly how I want to see your cholesterol. He is in what is called the heart attack-free zone. His bad cholesterol, LDL, 1.5, fantastic. That's exactly how I want to see that LDL. And the most surprising number that we see there is that hemoglobin A1C of 5.5. It means he is no longer a diabetic. His diabetes reversed. And you can see the change here. You know, after a year and a half of making those lifestyle changes, after losing 64 kilos, no longer obese, no longer diabetic, no longer hypertensive. Is that good news or bad news? Good news. See, for 30 years I've been doing this. And it's not like, oh, I've seen this every 10 years. No, every single program we see these types of results. As the person changes the way they live, you can see tremendous improvement. So how did this happen to these people? Well, in order to explain that, it is something that is called epigenetics. See, we're learning that most diseases have an origin at the level of the genes. And the way we live can turn on either the disease genes or the health genes. In his case, disease genes were activated, and after making those changes in the way he was living, then he was able to stop many of those disease genes. And this is something that we use the term epigenetics. See, you have in your DNA both of those. You have the health genes and you have the disease genes. In the past, we thought that it was like a prophecy. If you had parents with diabetes, that you were going to end up with diabetes. That is not so our understanding. We have discovered that many of these disease genes and health genes have switches, just like the light switch, an on and off switch that you can turn on and turn off. It's just like the light that you see above you. See, you can have the bulb. You can have the right cables connected to the power source. You can have electricity in the building. But unless the switch is on, the light is not going to go on. Something similar is with those genes inside your body. Like myself, I did this genetic analysis, and look like what the genetic analysis told me about my risk of diabetes. It says there that I am at increased likelihood of developing type 2 diabetes. Go ahead and check my fasting glucose. Go ahead and check my hemoglobin A1C. All of them perfectly normal. How is that so? Because of epigenetics. The possibility of the diabetes is there inside of me, but the way I live is gonna end up either turning on or off that disease gene that I carry. And this is Time magazine in a special issue that they ran on epigenetics, and citing from the magazine, the epigenetics, the new science of epigenetics reveals how the choices you make can change your genes, and who else's? Those of your children. See, sometimes we adopt this type of selfish attitude. Oh, I can do whatever I want because it's my body. Well, not necessarily, because you may end up passing those genes to another generation. So the choices that you are taking are actually affecting those under you, because you pass those genes and those predispositions to disease or to health. And a classic example of this is located not too far from Australia in some islands by the name of the Marshall Islands. In the Marshall Islands, the American government took control of those islands, and they used the Marshall Islands as a testing sites for atomic bombs. They would build, different houses with different materials, and then they would throw an atomic bomb to try to see, which materials actually, withstand better, a blast from an atomic bomb and so forth. Very interesting research. But unfortunately, there were other people in the nearby islands that end up being affected by that radiation. So what these people did, they end up taking the American government to court, saying, look, these people end up causing us harm. And of course, they won the suit, because there's even videos. You can just go to YouTube. This is actually an actual picture of one of those bombs there in the Marshall Islands. There was no question about it that the American government had caused this. So now think about it, You live in one of these parasitical islands there in the Pacific, with a very simple way of living. What are you going to do with so much money that the American government had to pay? And you know what happened to these people? They got a second bomb, but this time a bomb of junk food. They started importing all kinds of things that their ancestors never ate. And as a result of the extra money, life became actually quite sedentary, and a transformation took place in those islands. From a diet consisted of fruits, roots, vegetables, and a few sea products, today their favorite food is Spam. You guys know what Spam is, isn't it? This canned, processed pig meat. That's their favorite food. And I've been to many of those islands. They have the pile there of Spam, because that's what people are looking and wanting to purchase. So all these processed foods and so forth are their daily food today. So it is a very sad situation in those islands. That's actually a picture of them, of the past. Did you know that the Marshall Islands today has one of the highest rates of diabetes in the world? From a place where diabetes was unknown. Today, amputations, people that are blind, kidney problems, and so forth are the daily things there in those islands. They are in a very, very sad situation today. And the good news is that lifestyle changes do make a big difference. There's another patient of ours. I am in the process of publishing this clinical case. Again, classic patient that comes to us, diabetes, hypertension, obesity, depression, allergies. He had to take this bag of medication every single day. So we helped this patient in a couple of months to stop every single medication as he started making those positive lifestyle changes. And we started doing the mathematics. How much money this patient is saving by not taking those medications? You know what's the math? It is $53,850 a year that he is saving by not taking those medications. Is that good or bad? I mean, that is the down payment you needed for your new home, isn't it? Or that new Tesla that you wanted to buy, There you go. So as you can see, not only your health improves, your pocket actually improves as you make those positive lifestyle changes. And it's interesting that God wants us to have good health. Here in Deuteronomy, we say in the second line that it may go well with you and your children after you, that you may prolong your days in the land which the Lord your God is giving you. God wants you to be healthy. God wants you to have good life. That is His will. Now, notice here, for example, regarding diabetes. This is a study here in the abdominal area. And that whitish area that you see there is fat. So notice there's that correlation between gaining abdominal fat and your risk of diabetes. There's a genetic factor here. For some races, just a little bit of that extra fat is disaster metabolically speaking. And like in my case, Latinos were like that. A little bit of extra fat is disaster. Unfortunately, also Asians are like that. Indians are like that. Pacific Islanders are like that. And certain African groups are also like that. So if you have this type of genetics, you need to be very careful with your body due to the fact that we genetically can, develop diabetes quite easily as we gain weight. So this DNA and genes and so forth, if you're not very familiar with that, don't worry about it. Think about that DNA as a cookbook. Anybody here has a cookbook? What's a cookbook? A cookbook is a collection of recipes. So a recipe is a step-by-step procedure, at how to accomplish something. So that's exactly your DNA. Your DNA is composed of genes. So think about those genes like the recipes. There's many different recipes. Are all the recipes the same in the book? No, isn't it? One says for breakfast, the other one says, for dinner, the other one is desserts and so forth. The same thing in your DNA. There's multiple different types of genes. Or if you're a little bit more electronically oriented, think about your DNA like the apps on your cell phone. Question, do you run all your apps on your cell phone at the same time? No, you're going to crash your phone, isn't it, if you do that? So the same way with the DNA. You don't run all the genes at the same time. Which genes do you run? You run the genes that you have a need of, just like your cell phone. If you're lost somewhere there in Sydney, you don't know where you are, well, go ahead and click there on the app with the map. It'll tell you, where to go and so forth. You want to send a message, there's an app there that sends the message. You want to play some game or something, there's an app there, allows you to play some sort of game or something. The same way in our DNA. You have multiple different genes depending on the needs and what are the requirements that you actually have. So this process of interpreting the genes, they go something like this. So here you can see we are going inside the nucleus of the cell. Inside the nucleus of the cell, that's where you're going to find the famous DNA. That's where it's located. So when the gene activates, the following things take place. First, we need to open the DNA. So there is a micro machine that knows how to open that DNA without harming the DNA. Once the recipe that I need is exposed, another micro machine assembles and starts to make a copy of that particular recipe. You know how you call this recipe? It's the famous mRNA. Okay, that's the famous mRNA. So then that needs to travel outside of the nucleus. It needs to identify at the door. If it identifies correctly, the door will open, and then the recipe will travel outside of the nucleus. This is just the recipe. We need to interpret this recipe. So what happened, there is another micro machine outside. It starts to assemble in order to interpret this recipe. So the way you interpret this is the following. You have three complementary pairs. If those pairs match correctly, then it stays there and a protein is left at the bottom. This needs to be done correctly. One mistake and that protein is no good. So this is something that needs to be done very accurately. If we zoom out, you can see the recipe coming up in the top and the end result in the bottom. Now, we haven't finished. Now, we need to fold this protein. So there's another micro machine that knows how to do that. So very carefully starts to fold this protein. This also is something that needs to be done accurately. One mistake in the angle and the protein is no good. So this is something that needs to be done very, very accurately. So once that protein is folded, there is something that works like a truck that's going to go ahead and pick up that protein and takes it where is needed. Now, is this something very simple? Man, this is so complex. In fact, I was recently in a biochemistry refreshing class. We had one of the top experts in the world of biochemistry. And the professor said the following. He said, I don't care what you believe, but I can tell you something. Somebody designed this. This is so complex that if there is one step missing, the whole thing doesn't work. You have to have everything at once for this process to take place. In fact, right now, as you are sitting down, this process is happening inside of you. So this is something fascinating. Now, notice this. This is a human body. It's interesting, the following fact. So you have in your body the DNA. So the DNA is a custom-made book. In other words, your book, your DNA, is different than my DNA. That's why we don't look alike, okay? In that DNA, the instructions of how to make the human body are spelled out there very well. So it's interesting because you have 1 trillion cells. It means, if you really think about it, for example, the cells in your hand, they have the same book all over your body. That means that the cells in your hand know how to make the brain. How come you don't have the brain in your hand? The cells in your toe, they know how to make the heart. The instructions are there. Why you don't have your heart down there? What's the answer? Epigenetics. Remember how we talk about that switch on and off? So when you were in your mother's womb and it came time to make your hands, well, any genes, any recipes not related to hand were turned off, while any recipes related to hand were turned on. So it was like an orchestra when you were in your mother's womb, all these sets of genes being turned off, being turned on in the right fashion, and so forth. And that's what made you who you are today. Fascinating, isn't it? That's why, to me, it's very interesting that the psalmist wrote about this. It says, your eyes saw my substance being yet formed, and in your book they were all written, the days fashioned for me, when yet there was none of them. Which book is that? How do you call that book? The DNA. So in that DNA book, all these things were written that later on became. So we're going to do something. We're going to take a little 10-minute break, and we'll continue for the second part of the presentation.
So just a reminder, folks, there's some refreshments. Just make your way through to the back and get a nice drink, and there's some snacks there as well. And please come back on time. In about 10 minutes, be back here. Thank you. Bathrooms are out that way too.